games can't really take, you anywhere. You can't, go and make money off of that, etc. At least I thought that back then, which you could back then, not as much as you can now. And so I was like, well, I'm really good at soccer. I think I was on 12 or 13 years old. I said, I'm going to pick that and go with that. And, I played, worked hard at the sport. And then end up after graduating from high school, I went overseas to Germany and I played soccer there for a few years. And then while I was over there, so I knew what esports was, but I learned how big it was. I just saw some stuff on like YouTube and then started watching Twitch and then realized how massive, how big of an industry esports was. And so I was like, wow, this is great. I really wanted to get in this industry, and so I pretty much was looking around doing research, for different ways. How could I get into the esports industry? And then finally, I came across, the idea. It was about like 6 months of searching, or 5, 6 months of searching about, esports gaming centers and how those were. And so, it was a place people went to play games, they had tournaments, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's interest. That's like the grassroots level. And I just thought back to sports. I was like, sports did let's for soccer, there was like a clear defined path on how you go. Start playing recreation and then you play, for like a more competitive type team, you have your travel teams, and then now there's so many different types of leagues in advance, and then you just get coaching on the side, like maybe do private training, maybe do group training. And so I was like, well, let's see how we could take that and implement that within esports. And so, and then, obviously most gamers aren't gonna, become professionals. And then that's what actually led us to our current business model. But, we started, that was actually something that was more so of a side part of the business. And the reason for that was, the gaming center model was so strong. We was like, oh, let's just, have it for additional revenue. But then, something that never happened before, within anyone that was alive century was, COVID. And so, it was a global pandemic and the business struggled a lot when we first opened. And the reason for the struggle was, the business model wasn't sustainable for, really anyone in the industry, because it involved people coming and being in person. Gamers are very COVID cautious. We didn't have any like parties or larger events go on because anyone that wanted to do a party said, oh, we can only get 3, 4 kids together. Parents still don't want their kids coming out. It was very challenging to market, especially, I mean, people weren't looking for stuff to do, people weren't really going out. And so then I was just stuck. I was like, okay, what is it, that people want? And, I said we start off with it, the coaching aspect being a side part of the business. And so we realized that's what the real thing was, because there was enough people still coming out, like those like the individual people. Like I was one of those, I still had no issue going out to places. Other people, they, were more cautious about it and didn't want to go out. But the people, I was like, that do want to come out, let's offer something for them. So, that they came out as a way to socialize, be with other people, and then we did that. That business model was working and doing well. And then summer comes along, and when summer comes along, we was like, hey, let's do some different camps. We went over ideas. It's like, oh, let's do like sort of STEM camp. It was mostly Minecraft and Scratch. Now we've added more to the program, and then we did those, and those just blew up. And those continue to do well. And then even after summer, it dropped off. We still did some track out, but what I came to learn was that there was a higher demand for the educational side of esports than it was actually for like the entertainment and competitive side. So that's what we decided, to focus on. And then, I'm a huge advocate for education. And then, there's pros and cons to our school system. I know a lot of those, meetings I've been going to, there's a lot of cons when and talk about it. And, the biggest thing I have about it is that there's the lack of innovation, because, school, I think, is great for teaching, the reading, writing, math, basic subjects. But then when you get into technology, that's an industry that's just boom. 10 years ago, I went into high school and I had a flip phone. And then now, we have kids going to high school have like these, super high tech iPhones. And so the whole thing with the business model, we saw that there was a lack of innovation, in well, also overall everywhere, and these skills weren't being taught. And so what we focus on mostly, our niche is video game design and IT, because when you take those two, one, they're great skills to have just to know how computers and software works. I've learned so much just from working here that are very valuable skills. And then, and within video game design, because making video games is great career path for someone to have. And the business model is now structured around education. We still do have, like, Fortnite teams and different workshops around gaming, but we really focus on the camps after school portion, birthday parties as well, but that's still entertainment. And so within those, what we do, we find things that are new and innovative, something that kids may or may not have experienced before. A lot of them say that, oh yeah, we've done some Minecraft, some Scratch, in school, and then but things like, okay, let's help them continue on with that, let's help them progress with what they were currently doing. And so, with that, helping them continue to, progress and gain skills. And then it was really geared towards elementary or middle schoolers at the start. And then when it was okay, so then we took that, like, okay, now, we've been in business 2 years for next month for 2 years. And so, like, okay, now people are starting to get older. We need to offer something for the high school age, and we do that. And by offering things for the high school age, that's when things more experience come in. Like, we could teach video game design through Unreal Engine or Unity. We've been talking about doing things on Blender, and even have more advanced hands-on and type of class or curriculum around the IT field, still figuring out what all that's going to look like. But that's where our next goal and mission is within that. And so that's where the business is. That's where it's really been modeled behind with the education. And then we are heavily community involved. So we're not just this one brick and mortar location. We're actually looking to work with the community. So we work with the schools a lot. We work with Wakehead Partnership over the summer, also with District C. We host interns from the Wake County Public School system. We, I regularly serve on different business alliances, do speeches from schools. We'll host, different field trips, and with lots of different types of organizations. It could be nonprofits, it could be schools, it could be different municipalities, and that's where our business model is grown and been built around. And so, what I'll do real quick is take you on a quick tour of the facilities to see, what it looks like, what we have going on. Okay, there we go. Okay. So yeah, I actually took my mic out instead of my power cord. All right, and so what we have here. Let me know if this doesn't look clear on the screen.
You're getting a little glare, but you're fine.
All of our stations out here in this main area, and this is where we'll host, pretty much everything. Our camps, after school programs, and then we actually have 2 party rooms in the back that we use for the birthday parties, which I'm walking to right now. But
all right, so here's my first question, because this is a lot. Where did the financing? Did you go out and get investors to do this? Is this like your money? Who?
So yeah, great
upfronted
question.
all of this?
And that's one of the party rooms that are there. Yeah. So I took out, well, not really took out loan, but my dad and I are in business together. And so I approached to him with the whole idea, and then he was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And then, really started out being just me and, the business working, operating. And then since it started doing, really well, he's gotten more involved. And our goal is to be opening up more centers, looking to be able to take our services online and really continue to, progress what we currently have going on.
So, I mean, this is all extremely interesting from a variety of different angles. One, obviously, what we do here is very much on the education side of the industry because basically, we started doing this because nobody teaches developers about business. Esports is another piece of that because there's still a lot of people in the industry who see a bit of a chasm between the actual indie game developers and game developers in general and then the esports scene. We see a whole lot of investment going into that, a whole lot of money and exposure coming into that, and then still a little bit on the game dev side, but there are still a lot of people who look at it as two completely different sides. And so the fact that you are, starting this education, especially at a young age and bringing people up that way, that's got interesting benefits to the industry in general, because I think as long as people understand some basics of how this stuff works, then they're going to be better off in the end. Are you seeing more students come in and they want to be esports athletes, they want to be content creators, or they want to be game developers?
So, I mean, every kid, wants to be a professional, you know, gamer. Like, so when it be esports pro and all that, and then they usually phase out of that. Everybody when they're younger, they want to be like a professional athlete or astronaut, wherever. They phase out of that. So, really, I would say it. Most don't actually have a clue. It's usually their mom's the one signing them up, and they're about kids are usually 8 to 12 years old. Like those that's like the main age that we get right now, and then it's like they like playing Minecraft, so the mom signs them up. They come here, learn stuff. They have a lot of fun. I'm not really sure if they're thinking too much about that. I can tell you when we first started, it was a lot of people that wanted to be, competitive gamers because that's where our whole business model was focused on. But since we've changed it to more the education, and since it's geared towards elementary and middle schoolers, we have had some people come through and say that they want to develop games, which they're usually on the older age, like around 12 to 14. So I would say it's around, in the game development, video game design, as opposed to, the other things that you mentioned.
So, I mean, and one of the things that we constantly talk about is that there is no like normal path to a job in this industry, at least that worked for me 25 years ago. And for a lot of the roles in the industry, there's still not. But are you seeing more of a concrete path, for students that once they get to high school or whatever, and they decide, okay, yes, I want to go into esports? Are you seeing different classes in college or curriculums or pathways for those students to go into the esports side, whether as a player or on the broadcast analytics side?
So, and within mention the college, we have hosted numerous interns from William Peace. I know they have a game design simulation program. They actually work with Wake Tech. Wake Tech, I heard, have a really good game design simulation degree as well. And so there is like those career paths. What the issue is that comes in, I know, because something you take cybersecurity. I mean, it is impossible to not be able to get a job in cybersecurity if you know what you're doing. But the thing is, I was wondering why so many people don't go into those career fields. And I've had teachers and other parents, they said that like high schools, they have no idea that's a career path. And so they say, because I think back when I was in school, it's all, doctor, lawyer, engineer, teacher, what else? You may have like scientist or something like that. But, they don't really expose you to, that many career paths, until I saw the movie The Wolf of Wall Street when I was 16 years old. I honestly thought a stockbroker was someone that went broke from trading stocks. It said stock and stockbroker, and I see that is like what I mentioned about one of the issues with the school system. And it actually has been changed. Like the teachers, superintendents, all have been talking about it. That there was this. It seemed to be this one path: go to high school, 4-year degree, and then like there's like it seemed like there was like just these 6 career paths, that really somebody could follow. And then it's like you were shamed. It's like, oh, I'm an electrician making $120,000 a year. Oh, shame on you for not going to college and all that. So, and it's actually changing, from that. And so, really, that's what we look to do, to expose and show that there are these different career paths. I'm glad that the school system now is starting to realize that and say, oh, not everybody needs a 4-year degree. So the paths are going to be a 4-year degree. Obviously, like something like the medical field, there's really no way around that. But it's like, there's the 4-year degree option, there's a 2-year degree, there's, community college certifications, and there's, just going straight into the workforce or apprenticeship types. And so, we're moving from that a lot. And then, but within the college scene, as far as like broadcasting and other things like that, I personally haven't heard of anything. Not to say that there isn't anything out there, but I haven't heard of much. Which I would assume it's more so like they don't just call it a broadcaster degree. I would assume it would be more something around like film or like video creation, some type of degree around that, where they teach you everything, from filming it to, putting out there, using on different platforms, cutting, editing, different type of scenes and backgrounds. So I would assume that, there is something. And then, the part goes to, do you actually need, because, now YouTube and Google are extremely valuable resources. I love using those resources and that people can learn. So it's like, does somebody actually need to? And now the main thing is somebody needs to be exposed to the career, and people have to be able to self-educate. Because if you can't self-educate, no matter how much free stuff there is, out there, you're not going to actually be able to, learn it.
The broadcast stuff that I have seen, and there may be a couple of colleges and universities down in Florida that do it, but especially it's out of LA. It's like UCLA. And
Oh,
so
okay.
it's schools that are like traditionally in the movie and the broadcast and the film stuff. And now they're starting to see more and more of it on this way. And I think it's very interesting that we've had an industry now for 40 years and still just get like tiny incentives into people at the university level taking this thing seriously, and then like esports comes along and all of a sudden everybody, you start seeing it ramp up, and it's not a direct correlation, but it's certainly the more visibility that the industry gets via the esports industry, the more you're going to see these companies come up. And I've got good friends over at Wake Tech. I can vouch for them. They have one of the not only best degrees, but like oldest. I mean, they've been doing that for, I think, close to 15-20 years now,
Oh,
that,
wow.
and that was originally designed by folks at Red Storm and a lot of the other studios that are there in that Raleigh general area. But it's one of those things that there's still so much stigma that goes along with it. And you're right. It's like they don't know we have real jobs. And I get that even, today, especially like when I'm at my kid's school or I'm meeting other parents and they're like, so what do you do? And I tell them, I'm a consultant for video game developers. And they look at me like I have 3 heads. And I'm like, no. That's a real job. That's a real thing. But I hadn't thought about it in that way of, these schools don't realize that this is an actual honest to God career path. And so they're not teaching anything about it, because I mean, it was one of the very first things that I noticed when my son started school in kindergarten, first grade. Because you're right, like we were growing up, it was like, what do you want to be? Well, I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a astronaut, policeman, fireman, whatever. And now they're all like, I want to be YouTubers. Like, it's just not
Yeah,
quite
this has
that
changed.
easy, but it is seeing a lot more, recognition, and therefore it's being taught a little more along the way. So I'm very interested to see, when it comes to the education side of it, are you all focusing mainly on that programming side, or are you looking to expose you know, the kids and the students to, hey, look, you don't have to just be a programmer. You can be a artist, you can be a business person, because right now a lot of everything I see is like, come to our university and we'll give you a game design degree, and they're not worth anything. But Are you seeing a little more, openness and options and say, hey, look, there's different things that you can do within games?
There is, and then that's one thing that I really like to mention. And so let's let you know when they're younger, it's all about getting them in, meeting them where they're at. They like playing Minecraft and Roblox, and okay, let's take those games, let's use them to teach educational things. Let's, like we use pixel art for some animation. Oh yeah, let's teach them how to make different characters, their own animation films. And then as they get closer towards, the high school, a lot of times they'll start to take an interest in something specific. So like I mentioned, and we focus on IT, and then we're still figuring out what that means. I'm pretty sure cybersecurity is going to be part of it, but IT can mean 100 different things. And then video game design's another that we focus on, and business and entrepreneurship is one of those things actually that we focus on. And so we do that through, well, one, just working in there. You get, experience, you get to, learn about the business. I mean, it's one of those places where just a regular staff member, they actually see more things business related happen than you would if you were working in like a restaurant or retail place. Typically, I worked at a, a restaurant, a warehouse, I never saw anything, business related take place at, either of those jobs. But then here, staff, they regularly get to see it. Most of them have no interest in it, but there are, some interns that we get that will have interest in that. And so from the video game design side, I mentioned the high school programs just now, something that we're getting into. And what I used to tell people before was, we're not the place, if you're looking for something advanced. We're going to be that in the future. Our whole job is to get everyone interested in it. And then once they're interested, then we say, okay, you want to do video game design, you can go to this place. Oh, you want to do cybersecurity, go to that place. Then when we started noticing was, oh shoot, there's very few places that we can actually recommend for them to go to that I actually trust and, view credible. And so then I was like, we need to start, adding, our own, programs geared towards like the 12 plus years old range, and so that they're able to continue on with that type of education. And then really our end goal in the future is looking at, going to specific companies. Most indie game developers, I would guess, would be like, can you do it or can you not? There may be some larger companies like Riot or Activision Blizzard that actually want you to have, that 4 year degree, and then or they may not. I know that's actually changing, for a lot of companies. And so and the goal in the future would actually be to help them, find that career path. So to say, what is it that you want to do? What are you interested in? Do you want to make your own games? Do you want to work for a large company? Let us figure that out so that we can help you, find the right career path.
So I had to Google this up while you were talking because I've got a good friend of mine who is a high school principal down in Greensboro, like halfway between me and you, basically. And he had said a couple of months ago, he said they're opening a new magnet school here, like K-12, that's going to be for gaming. And I was like, wait, what? Because this is a very like conservative, somewhat rural area of North Carolina. And the fact that, the school system was going to go in and say, we're going to build a school specifically focused to teaching gaming and robotics, I was a little confused, to be blunt. But they are. I just Googled it up. And so they are building a school that's going to basically be from 5th to 12th grade, that's going to expose kids to all sorts of things, not just in gaming, robotics as well, but gaming is a part of it. Instead of so much of this other stuff that we see, it's like, okay, here you can get your computer science degree or your programming degree. And if you want to do gaming with it, that's one thing. But here they're actually focusing on it. And I think part of this is coming from, as much as I hate to say it, the money side of the industry, because Wake Tech's been doing their thing for a very long time. NC State's had a program for a very long time, but now you're starting to see a lot of the other colleges and universities. High Point University, which is one of the most expensive private universities in the country, they have a game design thing now. And so the more that these colleges and universities start to adopt this, the more it's forcing the elementary, middle school, high school groups to start looking at it as well and saying, okay, maybe this is something we need to start being prepared for and looking into, because it hasn't gotten a lot of interest, up to this point, or a lot of it. We're not taken seriously in this industry. until, probably the last 10 years. So it is changing. It's just a matter of seeing, okay, so what are they going to teach? Is it one of these things where they're going to go in and they're just going to teach the design aspect of the programming, or are they going to open up these options and show, students there's a whole lot you can do in games, even if you're like me and you can't program and you can't draw.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I know as well, what we like to talk about is like I was doing, we did an animation lesson for a nonprofit a couple weeks ago, and I was saying to them, I was like, all right, you know, yeah, there's animations in games, but I was also think about, the Geico commercial with the Geico Gecko and all the different things. I was like, that's animation. They're an insurance company, but they have somebody on either they outsource it or have somebody internally on their team that they pay to create those commercials for them. And that's where gaming can actually lead to. So I think that people oftentimes think a little too narrow of, oh, it's video games, that's the only thing you're going to be able to take your career path and do, which is not true. you know Even like when they talk about sound, that can be used in different movies, films, those special effects. So uh, when it's actually explained how these career paths, how these skills can be used in different careers. And that's one thing with the esports. And that's why people really like it. It's not about esports or gaming or anything like that. They said kids love video games. If we're able to take that and get them interested in tech careers, that's what they love. Because, there's a shortage of people, in these tech careers. And, when they talk about, well, money is, well, the reason why doctor and lawyer, like everyone wanted to be that was because they used to make a whole lot of money, and then now it's been good. They're not making as much, and what it costs to get that degree and the time it takes is not worth it for the money that they make anymore. So people really don't have as much passion for those career paths anymore, and they're looking into more, especially like people my generation, looking into things that they're more passionate about, that they would actually enjoy doing. And as well, you mentioning the robotics. And so a thing that a lot of people don't know, I like tech, I like investing in different tech companies. And some of the companies I've been looking at, I've seen like a security robot one. That was one invested in many years back. They actually had an IPO. And then there's other ones, like there's this robotic arm for, in the kitchen. I think, like they closed deals with like White Castle and other places. And they talk about how it reduces, overhead by having that robotic arm there, and helps you increase your profits. And then there's this pizza maker. I heard it's like makes this, I've seen multiple pizza makers, person. So you just walk up, type in your order, pay for it, 3 minutes, your pizza's made. And so, ooh, that's phenomenal. And I feel like that's really what's going to be going, because right now these small businesses, especially in restaurant, they're having this shortage of being able to find people, and this will help fix that issue by having the robots. And I know people all talk about, oh, robots are taking jobs and things like that. Well, I disagree with that, because you talk about, oh yeah, this one robotic machine, is taking jobs. I'm like, okay, someone that's also creating a job, because someone has to work on that robot, and the person who's getting paid to work on the robot is making a whole lot more than the person that was just in the pizza place or was the security person at the old spot. So, and technology is great, with the things that we can do with it now, and how you know it used to be, we used to not be able to talk to each other, being, I mean, probably like 25 years ago, we couldn't talk to each other, online, at least not with this great a connection, and not recording a podcast or anything. But now we're able to do that. So those are the great things about technology, and it's really enhancing and advancing society. And so I think that's what gaming needs to be looked at, that it's some that this is the future, and these tools and skills are going to be taken and utilized in a whole lot of different industries. And it's not just this random thing of a useless waste of time, unimportant.
Caleb, one, you don't need to remind me about how old I am. That, yes, when I started doing this, we had to literally fax contracts back and forth with,
Man,
writing
that
on them.
sounds
We don't
rough.
need to go into that level of detail. But I mean, you touched on something that I agree with wholeheartedly. It's like, there are, robots going into these other jobs, and yes, somebody's going to have to do it. And the other side of it is we're still seeing, this stigma coming out of the pandemic. And I saw it last night, one of like article about one of our local restaurants that have been in business for 75 years, and they're going to have to close because they can't get workers. And the woman said, people just don't want to work now. And I'm like, no, they do. They just don't want to work for you. That's the difference. It's like, there was a lot of pressure, with my generation growing up. It's like, you have to go to college, you have to get a 4-year degree. That's the only way you're ever going to be successful. And it's a load of shit. It's like,
Yep.
yes, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, yes. But still, in this industry, unless you're going to go into something like data science or something super, super specific, it's not always required. This is very much an industry of show us what you can do versus what you have a piece of paper saying that you can do. And a lot of the technology growth has allowed people, to start focusing on, let's do things that we want to do with our career versus having that job because we have to do it. And we're going to see more options and opening up like this. So the more that we can do to evangelize all the different options that are out there in game development and help set people up to succeed with it, the better off we're going to be for all of us.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I mean, I know I personally as well, talk about, was criticized by a lot of people for not going to college. And I know even people that work at colleges and universities I've talked to, and they was asking, like, so where'd you go to college? Like, oh, I never went. Like, well, when are you gonna go and stuff? I'm just like, never. And so, some of them still can't, get that, across that, not everyone needs, to go to college. And you know, I do see a shift, that's starting to happen. And then I feel like esports is helping out a lot with that. And the reason why is because, video games have always existed. And then, but when you start talking about, you know, degrees around esports and competitive teams and people making money, and then, the biggest, you know, battle that parents has, you can't make any money playing video games, and that's not going to put food on the table and stuff like that. Well, now they can't really say that, and it's forcing people to take a step back and look at it. And I mean, in the past couple of years, like, I have seen a huge change in esports, you know with people becoming more accepting of it. Has that happened, you see, like, in the video game and like the design industry, or no? Is it still where people are against it?
So the stat that I always like to throw out to other parents when they start, rolling their eyes when they say what we do and, careers in video games and esports in general. I like to point out that, several years ago, obviously pre-pandemic, when Buka won the Fortnite World Championship, he got more money from that than Tiger Woods got from winning the Masters that year. And it's
Yeah.
like, when you start putting it into that correlation, and it's one of those that's, oh, wait, that's a real thing. It's like, I'm okay if my kid goes to college to be a professional golfer. That makes perfect sense. You can make plenty of money doing that. They don't see the same kind of career path. The problem becomes, and this is where the education has got to go back into it as well. People look at it and it's like, oh, well, that's easy. You just sit down and play Fortnite for, a lot, and then you'll be really good at it and you can win a world championship. And it's not the same. And I see a lot of the kids are like, oh, well, I'm just going to be a YouTuber. And it's like, well, yes, you can put content on YouTube or Twitch or wherever you want to put it. Doesn't mean you're going to be successful at it. You still
Why
need
should
to.
someone watch it? It's
Yeah,
like with
exactly.
what you do. Why should
Big.
someone contract you out? It's funny. Why should someone come and pay us to, teach for a camp and teach their kid, certain stuff? It's always, why should someone? It's like, yeah, if you put out, why should I watch your YouTube channel? What is there on there that incentivizes me to want to see what content you have out there?
So, I mean, is that some of the stuff that y'all go into as well? It's like, not only can you do the content. But this is the other side of this that you may never see in the terms of marketing, making your channel stand out, that sort of stuff.
A little bit. So we have done some like streaming and content creation type of workshops and courses, and something we're looking to get into a little bit more. And the main thing, I really say is about the whole focus, because you know there's so much that we could do, but if you try to do too much in business, none of it's going to actually work. And so, but that is a valuable tool, and that is something, and it's about personal brand building, which is extremely important. I think that's the most important thing that content creation and can teach. And then also from teaching that, knowing what type of brand does someone specifically want to build. And so or it could be, within a business, okay, what am I looking to accomplish? For instance, one thing that we do here, yeah, the people they had initially, or different organizations we talked to, said, we don't have any way of getting the kids to you. So we said, okay, we got gaming laptops, so we actually go out to, other places, and we can run our programs out from there. And so the personal brand building and that, one, having a brick and mortar location does help with that, but just, getting out and about, really making yourself a credible person works. And I assume that, it's the same thing for you. You have to show your credibility and what you've done. And so it's for some people, Warren Buffett, which is a kind of a wild example. He's not really someone that needs to have his own social media channels, or for someone to listen to any advice that he may give. But then, someone like you see Gary Vaynerchuk or Patrick Bet-David, who they kind of were, putting content out. Patrick Bet-David was already a very successful entrepreneur with the insurance company, and then it was from the YouTube channel where he actually got his popularity, and that actually helped boost his insurance agency, because people are like, oh wow, I want to be an agent at the company that he owns. And so, and if someone's a YouTuber, it's like, okay, how do you get your people to watch it? Yeah, your friends or whatever may watch it, but what do you put out there that other people want to watch? And you actually gave me a really good idea, because I never thought about the marketing type side. I've only thought about the actual, streaming and content side, but that could be a great addition to our entrepreneurship program.
It's one of the things that we focus with developers on, and so this is what we're going to get into, overall today. It's like you kind of have to teach kids what they want to learn sometimes.
Yeah.
There's not that many that are going to be coming in middle school and high school when they need to start building this foundation for an education in our industry. And they're not going to come in and go, I want to be a marketing rep, because that's just not their initial thought. But by walking through them and saying, hey, look, we know you want to be a YouTuber, you want to be in esports, but here are these other aspects of being successful in it that you have to keep in mind. And so if you're teaching that brand building, that marketing side, that personal accountability side, whether they end up going into esports or another part of the industry in general, that is all going to convey over, and they're going to continue doing it. And it's one of the things that, the biggest mistake I see a lot of developers making is, they don't really think about that community building and that marketing side until, the end. It's like, I was in Germany last week at Gamescom, and one of the developers pitched us a game, and they had like the community building and marketing aspect of the development taking place the month or two before the launch. And I said, no, you need to move that over to the beginning, because you've got to have something going all the way through. So whether it's in esports or development or broadcasting or whatever, having this foundation is extremely important if this industry is going to continue to grow, and this next wave of developers coming through is going to be set up for success.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And that is actually what, I was talking about earlier about the self-education, because there's so many courses out there. Udemy has courses, at a very reasonable price out there. I said there's plenty of stuff out there on YouTube to look at as well. And so it's an okay, you want to do something, how can you learn that? With just then being in business, I mean, I didn't go out and pay $5,000, a month to some consultant, for business. It was with, okay, YouTube, different books, meeting, talking with different people, and then asking different questions, and then whenever having like a certain issue, be like, okay, go ask somebody a question, watch a video on it, read a book on it to really be able to learn, those specific skills. And I think that's what's most valuable, because I see that, in our business, anytime you ever do something innovative, it's like, you have these very skilled, talented people, but they can't figure out how to, do new and different things. If they don't already know how to do something, you propose something, that's different. Like, well, how do I do that? And so I think by being able to, adapt and evolve to keep up, with what's going on, because as you know, video games have changed a lot, in the 21st century. And then I know one time, like whenever my friends, we were there playing like Madden and FIFA, and all the adults still like, that looks real, like it's a game on TV. And so, and they were talking about, yeah, we had stick figures and these terrible graphics and all that. And so really things have changed a lot, and just having the skills to be able to keep up with those changes that are being made.
So, what was the biggest revelation shock to you when you started your academy, your group? What was the biggest thing that came in and you were like, I was not expecting to have to learn this?
I mean, I wouldn't say it was something I had to learn. It was more so what I didn't realize. I grossly underestimated people's lack of knowledge in the esports industry. And by that, I mean, esports actually blew up during the pandemic, from the professional scene. And then, CSGO, I think ESL CSGO just set some world record. There were like all these, events like happening online, breaking records, etc. I mean, and it was phenomenal. Esports was blowing up. I know one esports company that I won't mention, and but they were talking about, and I was asking, like, well, was the company profitable or anything? He said no. He said they weren't. And then once COVID hit, he said, then we started doing extremely well. And then once stuff started opening up, we saw the drop in it because people were going out places. And then he said, but then we sold, right as that started happening. So then we were out in the clear. But you know that's what was going on. And then people had no idea. I was like, this college scholarship. Like, really? I said, yeah, it's a professional team, 6 or 7 figure contract. And the thing is, so many parents, they said, oh, well, my child told me that, but I said they were 13 years old. I thought they were just lying and making stuff up when they said that people, made money playing video games. And so that's why I realized how challenging it was. And I mean, that took a lot of effort educating and teaching people, you know, what's esports, what goes on in the industry, it's actually career path. How do you get to the professional scenes, or just overall how we use esports, for education. And by being able to do that, that's why I go back to the personal brand. I pretty much built this personal brand, and all it was on educating people what this industry was, because without people knowing it, they would have just heard it. They would be like, what? Like, what kind of sports, huh? Like, I mean, me personally, I see sometimes, I mean, I may look it up, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But if I see esports, oh, competitive video game, okay, cool, whatever. I mean, there's a competitive everything. But I mean, like, there's competitive cornhole, but very few people know the American Cornhole League has a $500,000 prize pool. So people are like, what, really? I'm like, yeah. And so I just happened to be on TV one day, ESPN, after I watched something else. But those are things that people don't actually know, don't realize. And so I was just like, man, this is going to be a struggle with having to get on, tell people what esports is. But the great thing is I built up such a great personal brand in this area that whenever esports is mentioned, I'm in the conversation of it.
When you were in Germany, did you get the chance to take part or see the farming simulator competitive esports leagues?
I did not. So I actually didn't hear about that
Oh
until
my
like
god.
last year. But yeah, I mean, I just saw something the other day. There was like this esports Excel, like on Microsoft Excel, like some championship around that. I'm like, doing what? And so it's just wild how like online chess, became an esports. That wasn't that much of a surprise to me. But when talking about oh, um like Excel. I'm like, they seriously have competitions for Excel? I'm like, this is wild. And so, even now I'm getting into like, there's all this stuff on like the multiverse, is the metaverse, and that, which a lot of people still don't know what that is. But one thing that I was, looking at as well was sports tech, and how that's pretty much, well, sports technology is what it stands for, but using AR and VR, and it's pretty cool how they're now making cool sports. Like, back in school we would make up our own different games at recess or whatever, but it's like, well, you get to like live those real, like you actually get to fly, you get to do all those other type of things.
All right, we've got questions coming in. So, all right, okay, Dan's in charge. All right, so we've got a Fortnite team of 4 people and want to start doing online competitions. How can people break into esports?
Yeah, great question. So when you are, it depends on the age. So if you're under the age of 18, then there's a lot. So there's like Play Versus, which I know is a high school, has high school leagues, and there's a lot of different leagues out there for people under 18. If you're over 18, there's a lot of online, tournaments to play in, and then, but the main ones are, if you really get against competitive, are actually on Epic. So whenever you play, like when you go and look at the different game modes, it will show you all the tournaments. I think it starts tomorrow, but there's like 3 different days. Like there's some solos tournament going on. There's always different types of tournaments going on. I mean, the big ones like FNCS, Cash Cup, those. But there's always like some. I mean, some of them are just bragging rights tournaments that are out there.
All right, so a follow-up question from the training side of it. We are seeing a lot of these esports teams. One, they're shoving everybody into one house and they're having to play for like 12, 18 hours a day. It's like professional NFL players don't train that much. Where do you see that aspect of the esports industry going? Because it's, I mean, unhealthy to say the least. But how do you see that evolving?
Yeah. So, and then one thing I didn't mention about the company. 3 things we focus on are: one, internet safety; two, not in no specific order, all 3 are very important; two, uh, character life skills building, and third is health and wellness. And so for mentioning that, there's actually more study and going into that, because I know back when I could play for 12 18 hours a day when I was 14 years old. And so, but it's actually shifting a lot. And so, and just like how sports, I'm on one time on Shark Tank, I'm talking about what it was pitching, but A-Rod, he said, yeah, back when, at first, when he first started playing, like, before games, they'd give them like fried chicken and whatever. And then, and then like, a few years into his career, then it changed and they actually started getting those like rice and grilled chicken and, actually healthier types of food, because there was more study that went into, knowing what, how you put into your body, knowing about your sleep, things like that. And so I do believe, and then there's been, well, the main thing about the gaming house, which they said that teams that live in game houses, outperform those that didn't. I don't really think it's necessarily gaming house. I think it's that they train together. Even with esports, like it can, like, oh, video games can be played online, esports can be done online. It can, but it's not the same. It's a whole lot better still to be in person. Like when somebody, tries to do coaching online versus in person, we can do it online, but it goes so much smoother if it happens in person. I know, like one time, the first day of the Fortnite season for Fortnite League that we were playing in, it snowed, and so we were closed that day. But I texted all the parents like, yeah, we'll still be online. And there was so many issues of players trying to add each other and get in the game, because it was all trying to be done online, and it's harder when they're younger because not everyone's on Discord and don't have like all those group messages and stuff like that you can coordinate through. And then what was the other thing with that? And so, pretty much, oh yeah, so back to the whole team houses. Well, another thing is it's just a place to train. So like, because it's more so that they're together, so they could come to a place like a gaming center and actually train there. And so that's where I see with esports where there's that advantage that they're actually training together and not necessarily in this team house. But to the health and wellness point, Yes, there is importance of it, and what COVID taught, and something I use as an example, I said, okay, think about it. During COVID, parents like, oh, they're looking at screens for 8 hours a day or whatever. Okay, well, during COVID, you had Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. A lot of people didn't go up to go to the bathroom. They, didn't get up at all, even to stretch. They didn't eat anything. They didn't drink water. I was like, you did all those unhealthy things. Only difference is they're playing a video game and you were, working. And so it's like, I don't see how it's different, looking at a screen. And so when you put it that way, but the thing is, we have every 45 minutes, get up, walk around. We actually teach, we have different warm up exercises, for the players, students that come through. We have the cool down stretches as well. Injuries are actually a real thing. Esports and gaming. Carpal tunnel is the main one, and I mean there have been some horror stories. People getting messed up backs and everything because they've just been sitting down all day. I mean, and plus, not everyone has a nice luxury gaming chair like this. That's comfortable, good support for your back, and so then they're sitting in uncomfortable chairs, bad posture, and it can really cause a lot of health issues for people. And another thing about esports too is that now they're starting to have a more structured schedule. So it's not just, oh yeah, we're gonna start playing at 8 p.m. and go till 4 a.m. No, it's like they actually get their proper sleep. They have like their film study. They have their the actual playing time. They even have scheduled workouts now. They have off days, so all that's structured in, like how it is with professional athletes. And the main thing too is to like that someone has to do is know what works for them. Because in sports all the time, different trainers be like, oh, you need this amount of sleep, you need to eat these foods. And all that. I said, well, everybody's body is different, and the person who knows their body the best is themselves. So they know how much sleep makes them feel good. They know what foods, actually fuel them, make them the most energized. They can tell if something's off, and like they have these metrics and charts and all of that. But in all reality, I mean, that's just science. It's not, perfect. And so because of that, it's really about the gamer athlete themselves being able to listen to their body and knowing, how things are and what specific they need to do, and by incorporating the health and wellness part, and this is important for everyone, not just esports athletes. That's what I really see a great part and benefit in it, because the thing is, it's so worth it looking at a screen for 8 to 12 hours a day. I mean, don't most people? I mean, and when I do it, people are like, oh, Caleb is real diligent, but then when somebody does it playing video games, they're making a career out of it. Like, oh, they're just playing games all day. So it's like this double standard.
I can attest to the fact that you can get injuries. I actually, a couple of years ago, had to have surgery on my thumb.
Oh,
And it's from a controller. That's basically what it is. All right, so we got time for one question, maybe another one. If anybody has it, pop it in here. So this is from our friend Danny. A couple of questions. What kind of role do you see user-generated content and the introduction to these lighter weight tool sets like Roblox or metaverse platforms playing in game dev and esports education in the future? And also, what in general do you think indie developers need to do or have in place to build esports or educational programs around their games? We'll leave that up there because that's a lot of question.
yeah. So the first one about role user generated content introduction. So really, when talking about anything Web3 related, blockchain, metaverse, NFTs, is people, well, NFTs are more, so people really don't know what it is they're talking about or what it is they're doing. And it's not actually figured out yet what Web3 exactly is. I mean, I never even heard of Web 1 and Web 2 until Web 3. So I think it's just a fancy title, and it's like this whole IoT, the Internet of Things. I know even when I was at this conference, they said, yeah, it's overhyped. It's seem a whole lot cooler than it actually is. And then really, I think it's just advancements in technology. One guy from Red Hat was talking about how they were partnering with GE, and so how your phones are so updated and smart, but the cars haven't kept up. So making the car more compatible, like how it is, how your phone is, like updating for tech. I'm like, okay, I mean, yeah, it's Internet of Things, but it's like that's a good, advancement that's being made. So as far as the whole Web3 thing, I wouldn't really be too concerned about that, nor the metaverse. I really think that it's going to be where I know Epic are investing a lot of money in the metaverse. I believe it's where this, and you talk about creating game content. So the main thing I would say is to have a niche, because there's so many other places out there. We do STEM education. There's other businesses that do STEM education. Some are more focused on like app development. Some are focused on robotics. Others, it may be like 3D printing and stuff like that. So it's like, what's your niche? What do you do really well, and how do you educate through that niche that you have? And so our thing is esports. We make convince the kids that they're coming and doing esports, which, I mean, somewhat when they play Fortnite during free play time they are, but doing these different game creation lessons, that's not really necessarily 100% esports. It's part of the industry that goes into creating the games or the broadcasting aspects. And so I'd be really focused on having a niche and making it better, because is unless if you want to be like one of the big dogs like Epic, I'd say leave it up to one of those companies to create the platform, and you just put something on the platform. It's like Udemy is a great resource, where people can find educational content. Well, the only thing is like, okay, you have to have a certain niche and a curriculum that has as a value. Then you have to be able to market it, and you let Udemy take care of all those different details and everything, instead of having to build out a $500,000 piece of software and trying to work, and then having to build the educational curriculum off of that, and then having to upkeep everything. So does that answer all the questions?
Don't reinvent the wheel. That's basically it. And
Yeah.
it's, I agree. It's not necessarily about going out and creating the newest greatest thing. I mean, for bluntly, a lot of people don't completely understand what metaverse is. We had a company come to us and said they wanted to license XYZ for the metaverse, and I was like, that's not a place. That's not what that means, and they didn't really grasp it very well. But it is. It's about understanding what the latest trends are, what's growing, what's popular, what's going to be useful, and then basically preparing your game for it. Because it's still like the big problem that I have with esports. It's like the entire industry is focused on about a half dozen games, and they're all from huge companies. So
Yeah, it's like,
where are we going to get, where's an indie team going to really be able to break out and burst through? And it's tough. So I think it's more about putting yourself in the right position versus, what you can do and trying to create something from scratch. Caleb, we're at our time slot. And so I greatly appreciate it. It's awesome to have somebody local come in and talk about this, especially with the success that you've had and the way that you're approaching everything. So before we go ahead and plug the academy, what you're doing, tell people where they can get involved.
oh yeah, absolutely. So, the facility I'm in right now, this is in Waverly Place Shopping Center in Cary, North Carolina. And then, if you want to get involved, or if you have your child that wants to actually, learn how to do the type of stuff we've been talking about, great to be able to come here. If you're, a high school or college student looking for an internship, or anyone just looking for a job, want some way getting involved in this industry and space, shoot us a message. I mean, we're on social media and online. It's pretty easy to be able to contact us. We respond to everyone. And then, and overall, we're looking for, we're starting the expansion process and going all about. So we're going to be encompassing, the Triangle, then North Carolina, and then go national after that.
Wow.
Well, exactly. It's impressive. Best of luck. Of course, you're always welcome here on the show and on the Discord, answer questions and find new people to work with. Quick announcements. So if you're on the newsletter, you got the notification that the submission process for GTR, for Global Top Round, has been extended to the 9th. It was going to be ending today, but with us and Meet to Match, they've extended it out. So if you're out there and you're looking for investment or publishing for your game, absolutely go to Global Top Round and hit that and apply there. Make sure that you've got your upcoming pass to our next conference, which is going to be the 21st and 22nd, and the speakers are going to be announced imminently. because our wonderful program director, Heather Chandler, has already filled all of them, something that I was never able to do in the last 4 years leading up to this until like 24 hours before we went live. So yes, with that one, again, thank you to Tripwire Presents for helping us do all of this stuff right now. And then Dan.
Thank you, Caleb. That was amazing. That was some knowledge dropping right there. Like I had some mouth dropping knowledge stuff. I'm like, wow, that a lot of that just makes sense, man. That's some deep stuff. Thanks so much for joining us today. Join our Discord at discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. And if you just look up Indie Game Business, you'll find our Twitter, LinkedIn, social media, all of that good stuff.
We have a link tree now. Yes.
So link tree. Yeah, for sure. And anchor.fm/indiegamebusiness. And this podcast is going to be live here pretty soon on all of the podcast platforms that you can possibly think of. So everyone, thank you so much. Have an amazing weekend.
Thanks, everybody.